Money Vikings, Money Viking G here. I got a very critical one for you today, and it has to do with investing at the end of the world as we know it. Okay, REM fans, sorry about that. But end of the world investing, as we continue on through what I dubbed 5 years ago, the Raging 20s. I started that, I invented that 5 years ago, the Raging 20s. It's not the Roaring 20s. History repeats itself and kind of rhymes is what you end up finding out. So there's sort of these patterns that happen every 100 years, every 25 years, etc. We're entering another sort of, we're actually living through another one of the chaotic times, one of the more chaotic patterns that's reorganizing and reshaping things for the next era, the next sort of epoch. And one of the big themes of that is a dissolution of the old world order and a reorganization of the world order. What do I mean by that? It's a little bit along the lines of what Ray Dalio talks about. The old world order was centered around the post-World War II order, which was the Cold War order. Basically, the whole globe was organized in either communist red or the U.S. centered empire, right? And every country kind of aligned with those two. Well, since the end of the Cold War, that has broken up, that has dissolved, and then other powers have risen, and there's been a couple of things that have happened in U.S. history that were kind of misadventures, such as the things in Iraq and Afghanistan. So bottom line, without getting into geopolitics, that's not the point of this story. The point is, how do you invest for the next 5, 10, 15 years as we go through this world chaos and things reorganize? So what you have now is a kind of China trying to rise and be the global dominant power. We'll see how that ends up. They have really bad demographics. Their demographics is about to fall off a cliff, or is falling off a cliff as we speak. So if they can sustain that with their awful demographics, it's going to be very interesting. They may need to rely heavily on technology in order to sustain that rise with their demographics, which are currently bad. So how does one invest? Again, this is a middle class, first world channel for people that are investing in building wealth in a middle class society, a healthy society, not some of these crazy countries. So there's 3 different new ideas that we've found and done some research on. And again, I want to go back to a basic principle here. The wealth building strategy that we take here is called strategically diversified portfolios. So it's not just a diversified portfolio where you just buy a little bit of everything and just hope for the best. That's just buying everything, and I guess you're just totally own a little bit of everything. Okay, strategically diversified is looking at big macro trends and the way the world is shifting and adding small percentages of things that gain exposure to those growth areas. So, example, you're seeing that the baby boomers are aging and getting much older. So you're going to see things like healthcare and nursing homes have a lot of money put into them, because those are things that are going to be needed over the next, now from this point, over the next 20 to 25 years, right? So there's a lot of growth potential in those areas. So one might say, okay, I've got my basic 60-40 portfolio, let's say. I don't do exactly that because I've got a strategically diversified portfolio, but maybe I'm going to add 5% in a real estate investment trust that does skilled nursing homes, right? Or maybe I'm going to add 5% into a Vanguard healthcare fund. That's what I mean by strategically diversifying as things shift and as you see how things are going in terms of macro trends over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And then you can harness a little bit of that. Okay, so what are some of my top picks at the moment in terms of end of the world investing? And I do that tongue in cheek. The end of the world investing, I don't believe it's the end of the world. I believe it's the end of the world as we know it. It's a reorganization of the world. I am guardedly optimistic about humanity. Maybe that's just my set point. I tend to be optimistic. We tend to work things out. Things tend to get better for people. on a broad macro level over the long run. I will hope that continues. You know, there's going to be adjustments. There's going to be times where there's chaos. But I think at the end of the day, things tend to work out better and better for people if you look at the long macro trends. There's fits and starts. There's different situations. There's different places that are going to be, you know, worse than others. But I do believe that in the long run, things will generally improve for people. I'm guardedly optimistic about AI. I don't think it's absolutely the end of the world. Do we need some parameters around it? Do we need some rulemaking? Yes, of course. We need to protect people. But does it have the potential to blow open new classes of pharmaceuticals that can help alleviate awful illnesses? Yes, it does. Does it have the ability to make us safer in some ways? Yes, it does. Does it have the ability to improve our energy infrastructure and delivery? Yes, it does. So it has a lot of things and benefits as well. But every technology, as you probably know, is a double-edged sword. Look at nuclear technology. So the nuclear age obviously gave us great technology in many ways, different ways to harness power. It also gave us awful weapons. So every technology has both a good, a bad, a light, and a dark side. It's kind of the way it goes. Okay, so end of the world investing. The first one I want to talk about is the Van Eyck Rare Earth Strategic ETF. It's ticker REMX. REMX, okay? And again, let me say, I don't make investment advice on this channel. Nothing I'm saying is investment advice. I just share what I'm doing. So you have REMX. It's already up 13% this year. And what you find with rare earths is that they've become a national security priority. And if you're not familiar with rare earth minerals, they're everything that make our gadgets and our tech work. So high-tech gadgets, electric vehicles, military tech, advanced defense systems, smartphones. The list goes on and on, but rare earths are the kind of the magic ingredients, the magic physical ingredients that make these things work. They have to be used in order to create the science or to harness the science behind the technology that's now part of our lives every single day. So that's one to think about. All right, that I'm looking into. All right, the next one is called ETF ticker PPA. It's Invesco Aerospace and Defense. This has, you know, Northrop Grumman's, the Lockheed's, the RTX, the Boeing's, etc. So in an uncertain world, in a world where things are disorganized, whereas during the Cold War they were in a way organized, there's going to be an emphasis on advanced weapons systems and defense systems, because what's going to happen is advanced countries are going to want to defend themselves against foreign actors that are trying to hurt them. And so you're going to see an increased investment in staying ahead of the curve. And it also goes back to that thing about China, etc., where China is going to be investing as well into these advanced systems in order to, again, have a kind of global dominance. And so clearly the other Western powers are going to respond to that. They're not going to sit idly by while that happens. That would be foolish. That would not work out in terms of game theory. So you have that. Okay. The last one I wanted to mention, I'm putting these two together and I'm going to get flack for this, I'm sure. So gold and Bitcoin, let me talk about those two. So, you know, I know they're not the same thing, but in a lot of ways, I've still frame gold and Bitcoin psychologically in the same vein. So, for example, there's the Van Eyck Gold Standard backed ETF, which is a ETF that's backed by physical gold. I don't really enjoy the idea of having a bunch of physical gold bars in my home. First of all, you know, I don't, that's one thing that's always bothered me about gold. If the you-know-what hits the fan, I mean, what are you really going to do with these gold bars? You know, a bunch of gold bars. I get it. So I don't know. That's why I think maybe the ETF is good exposure. I'm sure someone's going to say, no, you got to have actual gold. That's the only way. You know, I guess you would chip flakes off of it to get grain and to buy a cow or something in the worst case scenario. I don't really know. But gold and Bitcoin tend to be modulating things that sort of modulate against paper money, fiat printing, central monetary policy, which could go against the value of a dollar. That's what gold and Bitcoin pushes back against. And again, that kind of stuff happens when things get too volatile and the economy starts to sputter. So that's when the government prints a bunch of money, makes a bunch of money available, which helps in the short run, but in the long run, it can diminish the buying power of that fiat currency. So that's one thing to look at as well in terms of gold. So there's 3 ideas of how I'm strategically diversifying at the end of the world as we know it in 2026 as we proceed through the raging 20s. Take care. Bye.